There's a couple different ways to create a Google spreadsheet. You can either do it from scratch, which is what we'll do first, or you can create it from a template, or you may have a spreadsheet already that you want to get into Google Drive and then open it in Sheets, and we'll go over that as well. So the way to just create a blank Google Sheet is to start out by going to drive.google.com. This is Google Drive. If you don't have an account, a Google account already, then you'll have to create one, but let's assume that you have one. And go to a blank area that's in where your files and folders are. I'm going to right click, and Google Sheets is one of the options. If you go over to the right, you'll see that you can do it from a blank spreadsheet or a template. So if you wanted to do something common like maybe a budget or create an invoice for a customer, there'll be a template for that that'll get you started. But right now we're just going to do a blank spreadsheet. So you'll see it opened a new window with your Google Sheet spreadsheet in it. Google Drive is still open in the background, and it'll look exactly like this if you're using Google Chrome as your browser. But if you're using another one, it'll still do the multiple tabs. It'll be similar. The first thing that you probably want to do is name it something that's meaningful to what it's going to be. So let's just assume that you're doing inventory. Name it inventory. You're ready to go. There's a few basics about how to do this. So you're only in one cell at a time if you're entering data. And it starts out in A1. You reference these by saying the column first and then the row. And type what you want in here. Maybe this will be the amount. And to go down, you either hit enter or you hit the down arrow. Typically, you would just hit enter, which will always bring you down. But sometimes you may want to go left or right, up, down, and just use the arrow keys. Right now, I'm going to hit the down arrow, and that's done. You've entered your first data in a Google spreadsheet. So let's enter a few numbers in here just to show you what you might want to do next. We'll do 3, 4, and 3. And then if you want to sum them, go to insert function, and it's going to have the most common functions here. This is going to be what you're using a lot of the time. And just choose sum, left click on it, and it wants the range of the values. So we're working in A2 all the way through A4. And you've also could have just used your mouse, left clicked in A2 and dragged it down to A4. And now hit enter. And you've done your first spreadsheet function. It's adding up 3, 4, and 3. So that's how you create a blank spreadsheet. It's pretty easy. The key is just remember to go to your Google Drive, create it from there, give it a good name, and then you can find it later. So I'm going to show you the steps on how to upload an existing spreadsheet. So one of the little tricks that you want to do is you want to go to your settings and make sure convert uploads is checked. If that's not checked, it's going to upload it, say in this case, in a Excel format. It's going to sit on your Google Drive in a non-native format. So if you put it on Google Drive to use in Sheets, just have this checked and it'll convert it for you automatically. Now that you want to upload your file, go to New and File Upload. And this is going to look at the hard drive on your computer. I happen to have put mine here. So this is the sample data. This is an Excel spreadsheet. Select it, click Open. And you see in the lower right hand corner, it's uploading one item. It has this X here, which is saying that it's in Excel. But if you see, by the time it gets into my drive, it's in Google Sheets. If you didn't click that check mark that I showed you a minute ago, this would still be an X, and you could view it, but it wouldn't be in the native format. So if I open up sample data, it'll open up in Google Sheets, and it's ready to go. See, but it doesn't always upload perfectly. In this example, the header just looks black. If I click in, say, example C1, I can see there's a value in there, but what it did was it turned my fonts black and the background black. So let's just go and turn the text color to white, and we can see what's happening here. So that's your 3 ways to create a new sheet. Make a blank sheet, create one from a template, or upload existing data. Next, we're going to go through how to format it, and so hang on for that. So if you're using Google Sheets and you have some data that looks like this on the left, and you want to make it apparent that it's a table, use some nice colors, make it obvious what the headers and the title are. That's what we're going to do in this tutorial. So we're going to start with unformatted and work our way over to something that looks like this. So here we go. If we do one cell, let's say we want to do A1, you hover over it with the mouse and you left click one time. That selects it. Don't double click. If you double click, it brings you inside the cell and it thinks that you want to change the contents of it. The second way that we're going to select data is you're going to either select the entire column, and I did that by left clicking on the A, or you can do the entire row. So let's left click on the 2. And while that's highlighted, if you hold down the shift key, you can go down and it selects more than one at a time. And you can also select the entire sheet by clicking up here in the upper left hand corner. That's everything. So when you're looking at this data, the first thing that you want to do is make it apparent that these are dollars. I'm going to highlight all of those. So I just left clicked in F3. I held down the shift key and I used the right and down arrows to select this entire range. And I'm going to go up and just click the dollar sign in the toolbar. That formats it as currency. But then I want to go to column F because I don't really find it to be material what the cents are on a particular item. I kind of want it on the totals because I want to see everything down to the penny. But here, let's just go ahead and decrease the decimal places. But I want you to see, for example, this is $1.99. If I decrease it by 2, oops, wrong way. If I decrease it by 2, it rounds for me. So Google Sheets uses a standard rounding convention, and this turns $19.99 into $20. Now the value in here is still $19.99. Okay, if I double click, it's in there, but we've changed just how it's displayed. Now let's take this sample data. This is the title of the entire table. It's not a header for a particular column. So we should probably merge these rows. So I left clicked in A1, I held down the shift key, and I pressed the right arrow. Or you can just take your mouse, left click, select all these, left click and drag. And let's merge cells. This little icon here is merging them. So you merge them together, but I want it centered horizontally as well. So this icon gives you 3 options: center it left, center it in the middle, center it to the right. Let's put it in the middle. And then let's make it bold. That would be right here, and we're going to make it 24 point. So you really see, hey, this table with sample data. Actually, I'm going to make it a little smaller. It's kind of annoying. There we go. Now what I want to do is a really handy shortcut that was added just a few months ago to Google Sheets. I'm going to select what I'm considering to be the table here. But if you see, I also selected the header, which is row 2, and the footer, which is row 7. You'll see why here. I go to format. I'm going to say alternating colors. Why it doesn't just say format it as a table, I don't know, but alternating colors. And then on the right hand side, it brings up these options. Now I have a header, and it doesn't know that I have a footer. You have to tell it that. And I say I have a footer as well. Did you see the row 7 there became darker? I'm going to unclick it and click it again. And then you just choose the color and hit done. Now when you look at this, it looks more like a table. It's apparent that these are the types of units that we're looking at. This is the content, the actual data, and let's make it more apparent though that these down here are totals. I selected E6. I'm going to hold down my control key and select G6. So that enables you to select 2 individual cells at once, 2 or more. And what I'm going to do here is put a bottom border on it. I'm not doing an underline. I'm doing a bottom border, and I'm going to explain the difference. First, I'll let you see it. There's the 2 bottom borders. I didn't do an underline because if you resort this data for some reason, the underline's going to move. But if you do a bottom border, it should stay with row 6. Now, I also don't like this font, so let's use the trick where you select the entire worksheet by clicking in the upper left-hand corner, and then we'll drop down the font and we'll change it to Calibri. And I think that it would be better if the header, the content of the cells in the header, was center aligned. So let's just click on the 2 to select that entire row and then go to the vertical alignment, which is here. Align it vertically. Now let's say, look, I want to zoom in 200% on this. But when I do, things are too wide. So I'm going to make the unit cost, I'm going to put a space in here. You'll see why in a little bit. I'm going to make the unit cost a lot skinnier, like this. And I'm going to make the unit skinnier, and then maybe I could see everything. Let's make it a little bit more skinny, a little bit more. All right. What happened here was I made it so skinny that the units isn't fitting well. So what I have to do is, or one of the options that I can do is to rotate it. You can do this with all your headers if you want. You could select row 2 and rotate it. The other option, this unit cost is also running over a little bit. I'm going to shrink it some more so you can tell. And what I'm doing to shrink this, I'm just changing the column width by hovering over the line that separates the 2, holding down the left mouse button and moving left and right. All right, so my other option to make this fit, well, I could just shrink the font, but a fancier option is to wrap the text, which is this middle option. You see that put one over the other. Now, if you don't like how the others are all down at the bottom of the row because now the row is taller, let's change the horizontal alignment. That would be, where would that be? Vertical alignment, excuse me. Let's change the vertical alignment. Let's put them in the middle. And now they're all lined up. So that should pretty much cover the basic things that you can do with your data to format it into, in the end, make it look more like a table. Draw the user's eye down to the important parts, or up to the important parts like the header, or down to the footer. Let's go ahead and make these bold. That way it's more apparent that they're the sum. So when you're using Google Sheets, a very basic concept that you use all the time when you're working with data is cell references. And we will go through 4 different types of cell references, start with the most basic and work our way through to referencing cells in other files. So the most basic type of cell reference is called a relative cell reference, but it's the type that you just type right in. In this case, it's going to be C5. And let's use uppercase. That's the standard syntax that you are supposed to use, but lowercase works fine too. In this case, we're going to do C5 minus D5. And a few things to keep in mind here. So you always type the column letter first and then the row number. So we wanted C, column C, row 5. And then we're just going to subtract D5, which is the expenses. So we're going to try to calculate operating income. And you would say these are 2 relative cell references. And I'm going to press enter. You will see why they're relative in this next step. So that did a straight subtraction. But if you copy it down to these next 2 rows, and to do that, I'm going to go in the lower right hand corner where you see a little blue square and my cursor turns into a plus sign. I'm going to hold my left mouse key down and then drag, and that's going to copy it down. Now you could also double click on that square and it will copy it down as far as the data on the left goes. So it's kind of smart in that way. I'm going to let go. And here's what I mean by these being relative references. When you look back in cell E5, it was C5 minus D5. When you copied it down, it became C6 minus D6. Without those changing, spreadsheets would work way differently. So those being smart enough to increment makes spreadsheets far easier to work with. And that's relative cell references in their most basic form. Now, this next type of cell reference is called a fixed cell reference. And we'll show you where you might want something like that in this next example. So in this case, to calculate the tax, you want cell E5, and then you want to multiply it by D2, which is where the tax rate is. And it works fine there. That's the right amount. I know it's a negative tax, but you had a loss. But if I copy that formula down to F6 and F7, it stops working. And it even gets worse. First it gives a 0 and then it gives an error. What is happening here is that it thinks these are both relative cell references because that's the way you type them in. So if I look at F6, it incremented D2 down 1 because you moved the formula down 1. You have to tell Google Sheets, D2, let's backspace, change D2. That 2 shouldn't move. And how you specify that is you put a little $ before the 2. That's a fixed cell reference. If the column were moving, so if you were copying these formulas from left to right, you could fix the column as well. We could fix the column here too, but it doesn't matter because the column's not changing. So let's take that out for now to leave it clean. That works. So let's copy that formula down. And just so we're consistent, let's go back into F5 and make that fixed as well, even though that's not causing a problem until you go down. Now we have the same formula in all those cells. And let's just go ahead and fill in the net income because we need it for the next step. I'll do that. I'll copy that down with the plus sign, and I'm going to double click. It copies it down, but it stops here because there's no numbers to the left. And we have a total income of $29,000. So in this example, I have other income, but it's on this other sheet. And I want to pull in the income from there though. So I can do a cell reference. And what you do, start it with an equals like you always do. And then the easiest way is just take your mouse, go over to the other income and select this cell. So I'm going to tap C6. And over here on the right, it shows you what's in the cell on the other sheet. It's a little preview window. And that's what you want. So hit enter. And it brings over that 29,000. If you were to want to automate this or type it in, how you do it is you have these little accent marks. They're like a single quote. And then the name of the sheet. And then you close it off with another accent. And then you have to put an exclamation point and then the cell reference. You get all that in there and you're good. And the last type of reference that we're going to do is a reference to another file. Now, since we're using Google Sheets, it's all online. To find the file, we're actually going to use an address or a URL to it, and I'll show you how to get that. First, you're going to start it with an equal sign, and the function that you use is import range. Even though we're just picking up one cell, it's called a range. And then if you look at this syntax that Google Sheets is telling you, an important thing here, don't forget the quotes. If you don't have the quotes, it won't work. So we're going to put in a quote. And then I'm going to go out of full screen on my browser. And I have this other file open. To get the URL, go to the file that you're linking to. Click the share button in the upper right-hand corner. And use this URL that it gives you. I just set this so that anyone in my organization can edit. Should probably work with it at whatever setting you have there, as long as you own both files. So I copied that URL. Let's look real quick, sorry. The cell that we want is in D10 here. So remember that. Go back to the link. We're going to go into the formula bar right now to paste this. Close it off with a quote too. Do a comma. Now the next input that it wants is the cell reference. As long as it's on the first sheet in that file, you don't need the name of the sheet as well. If you do need the name of sheet, just do it the way that we did the last cell reference. You can see it here. I'm moving my mouse. But the other quirk here is that it needs quotes. You usually don't need a quote on cell reference, so it's easy to forget it when you're doing this, but let's surround it in quotes. Now remember, we wanted D10. So let's go D10, close it off with quotes and a parentheses. Now, if this is the first time doing this, when you hit enter, it's going to ask for your permission. But I've done this before when I was trying to get this video together, so it's not going to ask me. It's going to take a second, think about it, and then it pulled it in. We can change that format if you want. A lot of times you can't tell what format it's going to come over until you see it. Let's get that $sign off. Let's take the decimal points away. And now everything looks real nice. So that's it. You have relative, you have fixed, you have to another sheet, and then you have to another file. Okay, we're going to use this just a little simple table of data here to show you the basic parts of formulas in spreadsheets, what the different types are called, and how to combine them together to do most anything you want. So the first formula that we're going to do is we're just going to calculate the order total. And that's going to be the quantity times the price. If you want to use your spreadsheet just like an old calculator, all you do is just type the values directly in, right? 177 times $72. And that's going to get you to 304.44. But the problem with doing it this way is that you can't copy this formula down. And if these values change, this formula doesn't automatically update because it's just hard-coded in. So this is probably the most basic type of formula that you can do, but it's not very useful. But you don't want it hard-coded, so let's delete that and let's start over. Let's type an equal sign. That starts every formula. Any formula or function or whatever you do in Google Sheets that's not a value needs to start with an equal sign. And then it gives you this gray bracket underneath. And what that's saying is your formula has just started. I need some data. It's not finished yet. So it's waiting for input. The first cell that we want to give it is B6. So left click your mouse in B6. And it's already calculating and saying, no, I got a value. It's 177. But you're not done yet, right? You want to multiply that by C6. Let's grab that value. And you're getting 304.44, which is what you got when you hard keyed it. But this one's more flexible. So if I hit enter and I go back and I change $72 to $89, this formula updates. But it wouldn't if you hard keyed it. Now another big advantage of using formulas is that you can copy them down. So I selected this cell, and in the lower right hand corner you get a little square. If you hover over that, your mouse turns into a plus sign. Left click and drag it down, or you can double click too and stop where you want your formulas to stop, and it copies them all down, so it saves you a ton of time. That's your most basic type of formulas. Cell references, which is the first line here, combined with operators, just multiplying two cell references together. The second thing that you can do after you hit the equal sign is use a function. I'm going to show you the count function first. And again, I hit equal, it's waiting for something, so that's what the gray bracket is. I'm going to type in count, and I'm going to do it with my caps lock on because you're supposed to do these things in uppercase if you really want to be proper, but you can do it in lowercase too if you want. So I typed in count. This is listing all of the functions that are available that start with count. You can see it was filtering as I typed, so if you just have a C in here, it's going to show you everything that starts with C. Another way to input this function is to go to Insert Function, and this will show you the most common functions. And actually count's on here because you'll use count all the time. So let's left click on that. And this put in the two parentheses for me. Every function has to have an opening and a closing parentheses. And those tell the spreadsheet when you're starting to give it input and when you're done. If you start to look at the helper text down here, which always pops up after you type in the name of the formula and you hit the first parentheses, it can take a value, but it can take other values too if you want. So this is in brackets, which is saying it's optional, but we're on value 1 right now. And that's highlighted because Sheets is telling you that's where you are. If you go down, it also has a little gray triangle, which is giving you an explanation for what value 1 is. And it's just saying, hey, give me the range of data that you want me to count. I'm going to do it with my mouse. You can also just type it in or use the arrow keys. In this case, I want D6 through D9. left click in D6, hold down the left mouse key and drag down to D9, let off the mouse key, and you see it put the range into the function. This function is done if you want it to be now. There's no little gray bracket here waiting for more data, and it's showing you a value that it's calculated. Let's go ahead and press enter. So I've counted 4. We're also going to do a total. This is going to be another very common function. It's going to work the same way. And I just did that one with my arrow keys. You see, if you do these a lot, you get pretty fast at it. Now, the next concept that I want to show you is stringing functions together for a longer formula. And you can string them together with other operators. So in this case, we're going to calculate the average. Well, you would calculate the average by dividing the total by the count, right? So although I just did these in these two cells, you really could do D12 divided by D13, and that's the average. You could also kind of homebrew a function here, and so you could put the sum in the numerator, and then you could divide it by the count as the denominator. And close off the parentheses. And you type enter, it's the same thing. So you strung two functions together. You could also just use the average function if you knew that existed. And average these cells. Close off the parentheses. Oop, hit escape key. Close off the parentheses, hit enter, same value. And let's give this a date, right? So if you want to give it today's date, just use a popular function called today. It doesn't need any inputs, but it still needs parentheses because it's a function. Type enter, there you go. And that's the basics of how to use formulas in Google Sheets. Okay, so I have an example spreadsheet here that has some pretty typical data in it, I think. And when you have data like this, a lot of times you just want to put it in a different order, which would be sort, or you only want to show part of it based on some sort of criteria, and that would be filter. I'll show you sort first, and then we'll get into filtering a few items. And then keep in mind though, you can do this two main ways. So we're going to sort and filter from the menus first. But then I'll show you a new concept that didn't really exist in previous spreadsheets, is that there's functions that can do sort and filter. And to do those, we'll go down below because they produce a new list that's based on the data in this list. All right, what you typically want to do is select the table. That's going to make this easier. And then you go to the data menu and then do sort range. There's shortcuts up here if you just want to sort the entire sheet. That's not going to know where your header is though, so that's going to sort the header too. Maybe that's okay. You can also just sort a range, and we already selected the range. So let's just go down to the sort range option. It's going to give you a pop-up. I think it's easier to use. There's a couple options on here that we can talk through that you're going to want to change from time to time, and they're not in those shortcuts if you do the other options on the menu. So it's telling you, look, we're looking at sorting A10 through G10, which is what you highlighted back here behind this box. But we did have a header row, and I don't want that sorted. So put the check mark there. It's smart enough to take the names from that header row and put them in this drop-down list now that you told it has a header. And in this case, we're just going to want to sort this by region because we want to see what happened in every region. Keep it from A to Z. And within those regions, we're going to want to sort it by rep name. So you click sort. It did not delete any data. It's showing you the exact same data. And you don't have to unsort it to do anything. You can leave it like this. If you notice, it does it by region alphabetically. And then within that region, it did it alphabetically by the name of the rep. That may be all you want to do, in which case all you need is sort and you're done. But if you want to take this a step further by doing some more analysis, let's select the table again. Go to data and let's try filter. So I turn the filter on and you can see at the top of every column of data, you got this upside down triangle. That's letting you know that you can filter that column, but there is no filter selected yet. If you want to see just the pencils that were sold, you want to clear all of these. I just clicked on clear and just highlight the pencils. Click OK. And that filtered out everything else in the list. Data is still there. As you can see, it goes from 3 to 9, so those rows still exist, but they're hidden from view. And one concept here that's important to know is that if I sum these, if I just do E2 to E3, then you'll get 21, which is these two being added together. But if you do the whole range, and again, you can see this goes down to row 10, it's just hidden. It still picks up those values, 327, so they're underneath. And your formulas can pick them up if you're doing simple formulas like sum and count. But I digress. So that's one type of filter. So reset your filter. Just click select all, so all of them are in play. And then do text contains PEN. That'll pick up pencils, pen set, and pen. And then once you have a filter on, you can see that changes from an image of the upside down triangle to a filter, so you know that there's an active filter on here. So that tells you it's probably not showing everything right now. And that's true. So it still goes 6, 7, 9, 8 is hidden, 10, 11 are hidden. Now while you have a filter on, you can still do another sort, or another filter, but let's just sort this by rep. The filter stays, it's still showing only the things that have the letters pen in them. But this is sorted, so it's not filtered, so it didn't turn into a funnel. But you could also do another filter if you wanted. Let's clear all of them and just show Jones and Morgan. And there you go, there's 2 filters applied. You can apply as many filters as you want. And that's the basics of how to use sort and filter through the menu. So we're going to turn that off. There are a couple different ways to turn it off, and I'm just going to do turn off filter. Imagine that. This is the data that we started with. I want to get rid of this row 11. That's highlighted like it's part of the table. I don't like that. I'm going to right click, delete row. Okay. Now I want to show you the second main way to sort and filter, which is using functions. There's 3 different functions that we're going to go over. The first one is sort. So hit your equal sign, SORT, open it up with an opening parentheses, which goes on every function. And then it knows you do the parentheses and it's ready to rock. So let's give it a range. And in this case, let's do A1 to G10. Matter of fact, let's do A2 so we don't pick up the header. A2, we want to leave the header there to G10. And let's look at the helper text again here. The second thing it wants is the sort column. So saying, what do you want me to sort it by? Let's do it by the rep. So that's sort column 3. It wants a number, not the name of the header. And we want it to be ascending, sure, so leave that as true. Now you see the next thing in the helper text is in brackets. It's saying it's not necessary, it's optional. So let's end this here. And watch, when I hit enter, it's going to write this out to the right and down below it. So start it where it has room to work. And there, sorted list. You say, got rid of the formatting, that's all right, you didn't need it. And this is all dynamic. So if you change what's in the original list, it'll change. If you change what's up here, it'll change what was outputted down here. And if you click in one of these columns, hit delete, 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 it doesn't go anywhere because it's all being driven by the sort function in A12. If you were to go into A12 and delete, it gets rid of everything. The second function that you can do is a filter. So you can guess how this is going to work. We don't have to go through it in much depth because it's the same concept. It's going to output a new list that's filtered based on how you want it to be, and it's dynamic. So if you change what's above, it'll change what's output in the filter. It may take some time to study this one. It's a little bit trickier to use filter through a function, I think. But the last one that's added is a new type of function. It's called sort in. And this one kind of deserves its own little tutorial, I think. But what it can do is, let's give it the range, 10, is in plain English, it's saying, hey, I want the top 10 salespeople from here. I want the last 5 dates. So it can sort and return n number of values from your data set. We'll try one here. Won't get into it too much. Let's try a 3. So the top 3 And that's all you have to do. The other parameters are optional. There we go. That's the first 3 sales. If you want to learn more about these functions or about the sort in function in particular, you can subscribe to my channel. Do lots of tutorials on little things, mostly in Google Sheets, but some other things as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. And that's all. Thanks. Bye.